when they came to the clinic, they were just like, go to the hospital. So
Yeah.
she takes me to the hospital. I can't even walk straight. I'm like walking sideways, and she keeps having
Yeah.
to adjust me so I can walk in straight. And they go, what do you do? I say Muay Thai. They go, oh, it's a brain bleed. Put them in a CAT scan. They go, oh, wait, it's cancer.
Stories make up our lives, and about what we do every day that define each and every one of us. So, let me ask you something. What's your story?
All right, welcome back to Let Me Ask You Something, the podcast where I talk to everyday ordinary people about something extraordinary in their lives. Now, today we have Dan Henk. He's got a lot of things going for him. He's a tattoo artist. He's competes in MMA. He's a horror art and he does horror art and writing. So, what about? I want to get into the MMA aspect here. So, what about MMA kind of drew you in? I mean, because you do Muay Thai and boxing, and you are second degree black belt in Taekwondo, and you're in Jeet Kune. I mean, that's a lot of martial arts. What got you into that?
In Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Oh, okay. What?
Yeah. But yeah, I was a punk rocker in the South, and during my teenage years in the 90s and like early 90s, and they were not kind to people with like blue hair and, you know, spiky leather jackets and stuff. So I used to get beat up all the time, especially by like Nazi skinheads. And after getting my nose broken 3 times, and, you know, I got stabbed in a fight with the crackhead, and after all that, I was like, I got to learn something. I got to learn how to defend myself better.
Yeah, yeah. So, but you have a lot of I guess disciplines here. I mean, you have several disciplines that you fight in, or you've learned. Why have that breadth of knowledge of different styles?
Right, why jump around? Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I started Taekwondo, and I was really into that. I got super into that. I won a gold medal at the Virginia State Championships. The next, if I had money, I could go to the training class for the Olympics. That doesn't mean I'm in the Olympics, but that means you can compete for it and stuff. So I was all into that, and I saw the first UFC. And I saw this little skinny guy, Hoist Gracie, with the gi on, take down people that were like 4 times his size. I was like, I need to learn what he knows, because what I learned is not going to cut it.
yeah,
And that kind of, there were no schools really that taught Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at that time. So there were like other schools that taught a little bit on the side. It was kind of like people that knew a little bit of something. And so I was learning all that. I was trying to like figure out where I should go with all that. And at the same time, I was trying to make it as an artist too. And then my art teacher said, if you want an art career, you got to move to New York City. So I moved to New York City, and New York City being more of a hub, they had everything there. So first I took Jeet Kune Do, and I'm really big into Bruce Lee. And Bruce Lee's whole philosophy is pretty much whatever works. So I went there, and you study Muay Thai, you study Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. We take belt tests under Megaton Diaz, and all that was going straight, and then I had brain cancer. And so then I took a big break because of brain cancer. And when I came back, I mean, the thing is, the brain cancer itself, you know, doesn't have that many after effects, but the chemotherapy and the radiation. So I basically had to take about 5 years off. So after 5 years, I didn't want to go back to the exact same thing. I don't know. I felt really awkward about it. So then I picked up Muay Thai, and then I picked up Jiu-Jitsu again. And then it's really hard to get a fight with Muay Thai because less people do it. So you get the fights, but people back out. And after you spend weeks training and cutting weight and all this stuff, it's really disheartening. And I found out with boxing, actually lots of people do it. So it's easier for them to replace the person that calls out.
Okay. Well, I want to get with your brain cancer diagnosis, but I want to first get your art. So talk about what you draw. I mean, is it drawing? Is it painting? What do you produce with your art?
Well, I do all that stuff actually. And when I was in high school, I was kind of the kid who painted everyone's leather jackets. And my family was military. They didn't really make that much money, so I did a lot of reading and drawing on the side. So I was always a person into that sort of stuff. But my dad also didn't think that makes a career, so he didn't take that seriously. He kicked me out of the house and moved.
Oh, jeez. Baptism by fire, I guess. So you're in New York City. That's where your art teacher said you have to go make a career in New York City if you want to be serious about art. You get brain cancer. Talk about that. How did you find out you had this? What were some of the signs that you had to get checked out?
Well, at the time I was broke. I pretty much just started tattooing. I pretty much started tattooing as like, hey, there's a way to make money off of art, and eventually I'll get a job at doing book covers, the comic artists or whatever. And I ended up sticking with it because I really like it, and I've done all that stuff since then. But I started getting headaches, and I didn't know what it was, but I was broke, so I went to like a really bad clinic in Brooklyn. Where they barely spoke English, and they said, "Oh, it's just headaches." And I went to a pharmacy to get the stuff they'd written down, the prescription, and they couldn't even read it. They tried to call him, he wouldn't even pick up. They sent me to another clinic. I went there. They're like, "Oh, you're dehydrated." They pumped me full of saline solution. And the next day, like it felt like I had a jackhammer to the back of my head. It was so bad. And I had a girlfriend that had spent the night, and we ate Chinese food the night before, but the next morning I'm throwing it up, and I'm like curled over the sink in the bathroom, throwing up, and she's calling around like crazy. And when they came to the clinic, they were just like, "Go to the hospital." So she takes me to the hospital. I can't even walk straight. I'm like walking sideways, and she keeps having to adjust me so I can walk in straight. And they go, "What do you do?" I say, "Muay Thai." They go, "Oh, it's a brain bleed." Put me in a CAT scan. They go, "Oh, wait, it's cancer."
Oh, jeez. So after you get that diagnosis, it's kind of a diagnosis of an ADD diagnosis where it's all over the place. I mean, you just can't. I mean, they can't focus on what is wrong with you. So, but now that you got the diagnosis, what's that therapy like? I mean, you said you were broke. I mean, you didn't have much money, but you have this deadly disease.
Right. Well, fortunately, I kind of lucked out. And then there was a guy named Dr. Finley, and he's an expert on that stuff. And he's based in the UK, but he was doing a residency in Bellevue. People were like, "I can't believe you went to Bellevue and you're still alive," because it has a reputation of being a really bad hospital. But I lucked out by having this really good guy there. So he actually did the surgery, and then they prescribed the follow-up procedure. And I remember I went to pay for it. And the problem is, like, our whole medical system, I think, is really messed up. But they said, okay, for 6 days in the hospital, it's $134,000. Like at first, before they hit me with the price, I was like, "Oh, I can pay this." I'm thinking, put me on a pay plan, it'll be nothing. And they're like, "Yeah, it's $134,000. I was like, "Whoa!" I was like, "I don't have money." And then the follow up, like the chemotherapy and the radiation. If you put it all together, it'd probably be about $500,000.
Yeah.
So, they're like, "Oh," the guy's laughing at me. He's like, "I thought you said you had money." I'm like, "Dude, I just started tattooing. I really don't make any money. And no, obviously I'm not going to be tattooing, So I ended up getting Medicaid, and they ended up taking care of it.
Okay.
And so I was fortunate in that aspect.
So, how long you said it took 5 years before you went back to what your normal life was, as far as being able to fight, being able to do your work? I mean, how did that go?
Well, it's about 2 years to go through all the radiation and chemo. They thought it'd be longer, but they said you're really healthy. Like they said your blood alcohol count was like, or your blood oxygen count, not blood alcohol. Your blood oxygen count, they said it was the same as Olympic athlete. It was like really high. They're like, "Oh, so we can give you a heavier dose of chemo," which they did. Chemo is devastating, by the way.
Yeah.
But
say that wasn't fun.
No, but instead of it being like, I think it was 3 years initially, but that shortened it down to about 2 years.
Okay.
So I was thinking after the 2 years are done, I'll be fine. I can have protein shakes again. I can,
go back to normal.
Yeah. I thought everything would be normal. I was going to the gym while I was on chemo. I was like, "Don't give up."
Yeah.
But I'd go a few times a week. I'd be like, I was living in Brooklyn. I'd be biking over the Williamsburg Bridge. I'd be stopping, throwing up over the side of the bridge, getting back on the bike, and then going to the gym. Like everyone's like crazy, but I was like, you can't give up. You can't let life beat you. So I was thinking that when it's all done, I'll be fine. No, it's they tell you, although I didn't really believe them, they tell you that it's poison. Hopefully it kills the cancer, not you. And I thought, well, okay, but now we're all done. I'm still alive. It's good. No, your system is so wrecked. It took me another 3 years of just recovery till like I couldn't even have a protein shake. Like the first time I had a protein shake after chemo, I threw it up.
Wow. So, all right. So you're through this cancer diagnosis and you're clear. No relapses or anything?
No.
Okay. So what's next? What's the first thing you do after you are essentially healthy again?
Well, I was during the whole time while I was going through all the chemo and everything, my tattooing career started taking off more and more, and I was just focusing mainly on that. So everything else that was going on, all the physical activity stuff I kind of put on the side. Like I always work out a little bit. So I was like, still going to the gym, still like, going for runs or bike rides or whatever. Yeah. I wasn't focusing on it as much as I had.
Yeah. No, you were tattooing while you were going through chemo and all that?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So that made it an easy transition to kind of put your full focus and attention on tattooing. What type of tattoos do you focus on? What style of tattoos? I mean, I see that you're all tatted up.
Yeah, more realistic stuff. I like stuff with a darker edge. Like it doesn't have to be like slasher horror, lots of blood and guts and all that sort of stuff. But anything that kind of tells a darker tale or whatever, I enjoy. I used to go for straight up realism because I went to art school and that's what I do in oil paintings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then I realized that doesn't have as much durability on the skin. I mean, so you learn that with tattooing. I've been tattooing 22 years now. So I'd see old tattoos they did that, have aged and how they hold up and what holds up. So now I do kind of a little bit more of like almost like a comic book magazine style where it's like you focus on the contrast and and that helps it hold up better on the skin over time.
So now that you're tattooing, when did you start fighting again?
It took a while because I got so wrapped up in all that stuff, and I don't know. You kind of get out of the habit of like going every day. Like before that, like when I tend to focus on stuff, I tend to get crazy. Like I tend to like I won't do it like 1 hour a day. I spend like 3 hours doing it or something. So it's a lot, and then it's hard to like get back into that because you go, oh, I was here, and then now I'm completely out of that. So I did like I got a little bit into it here, I got a little bit into it there, but actually like fighting for a competition, it took me a while. Like I had surgery in 2001. Probably by about 2006 is when I recovered mostly, but I didn't start actually fighting until about 2014.
Okay, all right. And then now if that wasn't enough of tattooing and fighting, professionally, you also are an artist and you are a writer. Talk about those passions. I mean, you said you went to art school. You were moving to New York City for art. It got derailed, sort of. But how did you get back into that? And then I'm going to be talking with you later, and I'll be linking an interview with you on specifically about writing. But talk about horror art that you do and the writing that you do and how you got into that.
Well, I always wanted to be an artist and a writer, and I couldn't even decide. I didn't know if you had to pick one or the other. And I did very well in both. I took like, college credit classes in high school. And, I was the guy that always painted everyone's leather jackets and artwork for the bands and stuff like that. And then I remember what was kind of a revelation was when the first comic books came out that were like more adult oriented, like The Dark Knight and Watchmen and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I can do both. So that was kind of my focus. I really wanted to be a comic artist.
So have you gotten to be that comic book artist?
Well, I've got kind of. I've done work for comic books and I've done work for books and for magazines and stuff. But comics, it takes a long time to do anything detailed.
Yeah.
I don't want to do, this stuff that's like very basic storyboards. I like to do really detailed stuff. If you look at the artists that I really look up to, like Mike Kaluta and Barry Windsor-Smith and stuff, the stuff they do isn't the story panel stuff. It's they call them either splash pages, where it's a full page or just illustration, or a cover. And I was like, well, I could do books where I could tell like a complex, developed story, and then put some illustrations or full page illustrations in there. And that's what I've been doing, and people seem to really like it.
Okay, great. Now I see that you have a few books here up for sale with some stories on Amazon. You have 3 books out. So talk about those books. What these are horror tales, or are these something similar to that?
Well, my editor describes them as speculative fiction.
Okay, all right.
I'm not even sure what falls into the genre and what doesn't. But like, I do have a little bit of sci-fi. I mean, growing up as a kid, we could only watch 1 hour TV a day, and I was big on the Twilight Zone and the Outer Limits. So that kind of like dark, creepy edge, like maybe a little bit sci-fi, maybe it's horror, but not like slasher horror, more like weird, strange horror. That's
like
what really draws me in.
Like your hat, Tales of the Crypt.
Yeah.
I remember watching that as a kid too.
Yeah.
So, what inspires you? What draws you to do this creation? To create art, to create your writing. What inspires you?
Well, it is a good question, and it's kind of funny because when I was a little kid, I was like, what am I going to do? What's going to inspire me? But like as life goes by, maybe it's just an accumulation in your brain of like tons and tons of knowledge and tons of input. You eventually start to have ideas. And one thing I really notice it helps is like when you go on like a long run or a bike ride or whatever, it really ups the chemicals going through your brain. And really you start thinking of more complex things. You put them together, and by the time, like whenever I'm stuck on like I'm writing a novel and I'm stuck on where I should progress to next, I just take a break, and like if I go for a bike ride, I'll just think about it during the entire bike ride, and by the end of the bike ride, I'll know what I should do.
Great. So, where do you see yourself here in the near future? I mean, I see that you're up for some the Splatterpunk Awards for some of I guess your short stories.
Yeah.
But where do you see yourself here on the artistic side in a few years?
Well, I really just like to get my stuff out there more, and fortunately with tattooing, I've kind of gotten into the area where I do more of what I want to do. Like I don't do walk in, like you just pick something off the wall. That's not even really a thing in tattoo shops anymore. Most of the people, they'll find something on Instagram or they have an idea on their head and they come in and talk to you. Yeah. But now I have clients who like come to me with either well-developed ideas or they're like, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
So I like doing that. I would like to get my stories out there more. I've gotten them out there, but the problem is in fact, this is what my art school teacher told me. Like, it doesn't matter how good you are. It matters whether or not people see you.
Yeah. You got to be seen. You got to put yourself out there. And sometimes people are afraid to put themselves out there for a couple of reasons. I know I have at times felt like imposter syndrome. It's a big worry for a lot of creatives and non-creatives. But then you also have a fear that, well, who's going to want to read this? Well, if you're interested, there's probably going to be a lot of other people interested.
Well, artists tend to be their own worst critics too.
Yes, they are.
So people love something. I'm like, really? I didn't think that highly of it, or maybe you'll think highly of something. People are like, yeah, but this is my favorite. I'm like, really? You like that?
I know. Yeah, exactly. I've gotten that with some of my writing. So I totally understand that. So talk about the Splatterpunk Awards here. I see that you're up for it. You posted it today. It's January 9th as we record for this. And I think the deadline for these awards are on the 16th. So that's a week from Sunday as of today. So talk a little bit about this. What is the Splatterpunk Awards?
Well, Splatterpunk is kind of an isolated genre. It's kind of often the more like over-the-top horror stuff. like not just like straight up like, hey, you have a slasher or you have a psychotic. It's like usually they have something that's kind of screwed up and that really messes with you mentally. At least that's the way it's supposed to be. And there's something called Splatterpunk magazine. It started as like a little indie zine from the UK, and the guy was a mailman there in the UK. And I had my like 15 minutes of fame as a tattoo artist. So, you know, I was in all the magazines. So he's like, oh, I like this guy's art. He got a hold of me. He asked me to do the cover of the first issue. Yeah. And ever since then, I've done art for every single issue. I do all the book covers, everything. Okay. And it's just kind of worked out. And he's put out some of my stories. I have like 3 books out, but I also have a couple chapbooks. I don't know if you know what chapbooks are. They're like short stories and like, you know, little pamphlets and stuff, like signed and numbered and whatever. And so he's put out a lot of that stuff. And one of the like 2 of his issues of Splatterpunk magazine are up for the Splatterpunk Awards. Like I guess they picked a couple of different magazines with a couple different authors. And one of those Splatterpunk magazines has a story by me. Yeah. So you could vote on my story. Like you don't even just vote on the magazine, you vote on Dan Henk's story in Splatterpunk. It's Splatterpunk 10. Yeah,
and then just email the awards. So and then I'll link that above and below and wherever we can, and I'll put it out on my social media too. You got to vote for Dan Henk. Great. Anything else you'd like to say or mention? I mean, because you do a lot of stuff here. I mean, why do you have this wide of a breadth of interest in a lot of things?
I don't know. I mean, I see so much stuff that I like, and there's even stuff that I'm sure I would like, but I just don't have the time to get into, like video games, for instance. People are like, oh, you love this video game. I'm like, I would, but you know, I have so many other things I have to do. But I try to pick as much as probably more than I can realistically do. Like my girlfriend always gives me, you know, drama about that. Like, oh, you're doing more. You can't even handle this. I'm like, but I'll rest when I'm dead. You know, life is really short. Like my wife died in a hit and run, and that really kind of told me, you know, that like lit a fire under my ass, saying life is short. Get everything out there you possibly can. Yeah.
All right. Well, great. Well, Dan Henk, thank you very much for being on my podcast. Let me ask you something. Any final words or anything you like to say to people about maybe maybe something inspirational to inspire other people?
Yeah, look on my website is danhenk.com, and definitely check out my new book called The End of the World. And I mean, we might all be living in the Matrix, you know, but if we, you know, you may as well pretend it's real because you don't know.
Yeah. All right. Well, great. Well, thank you very much for being on my podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me.